Hello, everyone. John Drennan, sales manager at VIP Mortgage, and I'm back in the podcast studio with a near and dear friend of mine, Mr. Michael Greene with the MDL Group. He is a commercial realtor here in Las Vegas.
John, thank you for having me. It's
Awesome,
a
awesome.
pleasure to be here.
Yes. Michael, we've known each other for about 10 years. We met in our BNI referral group. You have evolved. You've grown your business. You have a lovely family. A lot of great things going on. But you and I are good friends. We talk real estate. We talk mortgages. We talk the financial markets. You have a background graduating the University of Michigan in the finance. I have a University of Cincinnati degree in finance. So we love to talk sports. We love to talk about our families, but we also love to talk about the financial markets. So, Michael, once again, thank you for coming in today. This is going to be fun. And I want to start off the whole podcast with something extremely important. University of Cincinnati grad, University of Michigan grad, but I am from Ohio. So I'm a Ohio State fan also. He's been on the winning streak lately, 4 in a row, but we won the national championship this year, and you guys won it the year before. So I'm going to say we got one up on you right now just because of the national championship. But you guys are really in our head, and I don't know what the heck's wrong with Ryan Day when it comes to this one game every year for the last 4 years.
Yeah, we do. You did win last year, but we went undefeated. So you got that 14-2. So maybe a little asterisk there. But
That's true, but you guys had to play a couple games. We had to play 4, and we played 4 of the top 5 teams, so that's okay. We can go back and forth on that, but that podcast would be literally for like 4 hours.
Right.
Okay, because we're gonna go back to the 80s and talk about that and stuff. But no, we're here today to talk about Michael Greene, originally from New York, grew up there, went to a very, very prestigious school. Even though I'm a Michigan hater, because and we banter about that. Michigan Business School is amazing, one of the top ones in the United States. Then you went back to New York and worked as an investment banker, and then you moved to Las Vegas. So tell your story. What made you want to get into finance? What made you want to go down that road? For me personally, I just always loved like the concept of Wall Street and money, but I also went the entrepreneurship route. I never worked for the big firms. I did work at Fidelity Investments when I was in college, but my minor was entrepreneurship, so I went independent. And even though I am a W-2 employee, I run my own business underneath the VIP label. So tell us your story and why you wanted to go in that, and then why you went out of that and went into the commercial real estate. So we're going to tell about your whole story today.
Sure. So grew up in New York on Long Island. My grandfather started his business in the 50s. My dad had business in the 70s and 80s that he ran, and I saw the hard work that it took to grow that business. And early mornings, late nights, not on the weekends, and I saw that hard work that was, instilled in me.
Yes.
And so for me, I've always been a science numbers guy, not an English guy.
No, me neither.
Right. So leave that to other people. So for me, finance was something that really intrigued me. Didn't want to do the stock brokerage, although I did have the opportunity during college to work on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange over a couple summers.
Awesome.
So that was a definitely interesting experience, but too stressful for me. Decisions need to be made right away.
Yes.
And that just wasn't something that I was interested in. As you mentioned, went to Michigan, best school in the country, business school. And really, I think a lot of people at that point, the cool job was investment banking, even though there's a stigma of what is that, those are all the assholes on Wall Street who screw everything up. But some truth to that, but I just decided that's really something I wanted to pursue. So I had the opportunity to summer at Bear Stearns between my junior and senior in college.
That's huge.
They offered me a job before my senior even started, and I said, that's a no-brainer. I have a job.
Yes.
So I went back and worked for 3 years at Bear Stearns doing investment banking. I focused on a group. I was in the group called Regal, which is real estate, gaming, lodging, and leisure.
Oh, wow.
So I figured if I was going to work 100 plus hours a week, at least make it interesting.
Yeah.
Not industrials or, other non-exciting.
You don't want to work in investment banking working on tires.
Exactly. So I focused most of mine on gaming and lodging. So a lot of hotels, a lot of gaming companies. And there we did, refinances, people issuing equity, issuing debt. We did a lot of mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
And so really enjoyed the work there. I wasn't a career banker, a lifetime banker. I love the work, but the time and energy that was going to go into that, I knew would not be something that would allow me to have a family and enjoy it the way that that I did.
Can't do 100 hours a week for 30 years and think you're going to spend time with your family.
Right.
Yes.
My dad was a salesman growing up. He never missed one event that I was at. He could make his own hours, and I
That's
didn't want to be beholden and or tethered to a desk.
Well, you know what? My wife and I've made decisions based upon our family. My wife specifically, when I met her, was finishing her accounting degree because she was an accountant for the school district, and then we said, what do you want to do with this?" And she actually went and got her master's in special education so she could be a teacher. Why? She would be on the same schedule as our children, and because of that, we knew that we could take vacations whenever we wanted to. We've never missed a dance recital. We've never missed a baseball, soccer game, anything like that. The only time I've ever missed anything was when there was a conflict with my daughter and my son. But if there was no conflict, we never missed any. So that was extremely important for me, and also my wife and what she did for her career. Now she's done significantly other things. But yes, I love the family first. I mean, I live my life, faith, wife, children, everything else is below that.
Yeah. So that's really for me what that decision was. And so I was trying to figure out what to do next. And one of the bosses that I had at Bear Stearns left become the CFO of a gaming company out in Vegas.
There it is.
Pinnacle Entertainment at the time. And he's like, "You need to come work for me." And I said, "Absolutely not." My entire family, friends, a lot of friends that I had from Michigan either lived in Chicago or moved back to New York. And so that was, my comfort zone. And for months, he tried to get me to come out and interview. I said, "Absolutely not." And finally, he's like, "Look, I'm sending you a plane ticket. Come out. It's a free trip to Vegas. Do that." During the summer, so not ideal, but came out, interviewed for 2 days, drove me to the airport, said, "Look, I haven't spoke to anyone else, but you have the job. Just think about it." Went back, the first and only time in my life I've made a pros and cons list.
Really? Okay.
Sitting in my apartment in Manhattan, I looked down and I said, "Fuck, I'm moving to Vegas." And I knew one person when I moved here, and that was my boss. And so that was in 2003.
Wow. I moved out here in 2002, and I had one family member here. That was it. So very, very different, but very similar.
Got a shout out to my mom, the Jewish mother in her, called up at JCC and said, "My son's moving out there. He doesn't know anyone." And I got connected through a few people. I don't know if that was the best way to start with my mom, but
You know what's crazy about that? My business partners, when we opened our brokerage here, were both Jewish. And so Lloyd came out and he looked up all these Jewish realtors, and we actually visited them. And he said, "That's my first connection." And my other boss at the time, he was originally from Russia, and he knew some Russian professionals, Russian doctors, Russian realtors. And that's how I literally started introducing myself to people, because I didn't know who, and nobody knew who I was. I didn't know anybody out here. And so they went with their religion.
Did you change your name to John Drenenstein?
Yeah. I probably should have for a short while there. But yeah, so I can't believe you just said that. And that's exactly how I started out here in 2002.
Yeah, it's amazing. So moved out here and started working away. And, I told most of my friends, "Look, I'll be back in 2 or 3 years." I thought it was like a stopgap for what I wanted to do. But, moved here. I really love the pace of life. I like living in the desert. I like being close to, Utah to go skiing, or I don't like the beach, but California. And so it really has hiking and really just has everything I was looking for. And
Nice.
really enjoyed my job. I did move back to New York. So I did that for about 4 years, working at Pinnacle, doing everything, small shop. It was a casino company at the time, had 5 casinos. They were building 2 more. I worked in the finance side, but there was 28 people in corporate when I got there, running
That's
5
it.
casinos. Yeah.
Oh,
so
man.
you pitched in where you could.
Yeah.
So it was, I remember being tasked after Katrina. We had a lot of our employees, and they said, "You need to figure out how to get people paid."
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing, but you figure it out.
Yep.
So that entrepreneur spirit was there. Was ready to move back to New York. And a former boss of mine from Bear Stearns called me again in 2007, said, "Look, we're crushing. I got a private equity job. You're hired." Perfect. Moved back there. Crisis hit. I love what I was doing. 14 months later, I was back in Vegas.
Really?
Yeah.
Economic collapse. Well, it's kind of funny about what you said about pitching in. So when I was a partner in the brokerage that we had, Robinson Lloyd Mortgage, my business card didn't have any title. And people are like, why? And I'm like, because I'm the guy who takes the trash out, cleans the toilet, but I'm also the guy who runs the show. So I was the same thing. We were a small brokerage. We did very well from 2002 to 2010. Some rough years there in the economic collapse, which kind of changed your life, and
Yeah.
you moved back here. But once again, two guys who just met each other in a referral group 10 years ago, and yet we have similar paths and lives, and that's another reason I wanted you to come in here, because I interview a lot of different people, walks of life, business owners, realtors, attorneys, et cetera, et cetera. But you and I just have always clicked.
Yeah.
And so we definitely miss you in the referral group,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you and I still refer business to each other.
Yep.
All right. So you moved back here 14 months later. So is that around 2010-ish, you think?
2009.
2009,
I
okay.
moved back here.
Did you get back to the same job that you had before?
I did not. It took a little while. There wasn't a lot of finance jobs at the time. I mean, to be honest, my ex-wife at the time was, my wife at the time, now ex-wife.
Yes.
She was working for Caesars.
Okay.
It was very hard to find a job at the time.
It was.
My one job, I looked on a Monday and that for a couple hours, and that was good for the week. There wasn't really anything else. And for me personally, my one job was not to be asleep on the couch when she got home, because she would be mad. Took a little while. Then I landed a role at IGT, International Gaming,
Yep.
the large slot manufacturer.
Very
I was
large.
doing investor relations.
Okay.
Very different from what I was accustomed to, outside of my comfort zone, speaking in front of people, writing press releases, and writing in general, just not fun. But I didn't.
No chat GPT back then.
That would, yeah, I would much prefer that. So that's what I did for 4 years.
Okay.
Enjoyed it. A lot of growth in the company. Got to see different casinos. Within 2014-ish, I got recruited by a boutique investment bank in Vegas to go back to kind of doing what I was doing. I was divorced at the time, so I had plenty of time to work when I didn't have my daughter.
Correct.
And traveled 3, 4, 2 to 3 times a month.
Really?
Really, the weeks I didn't have my daughter, I was out in, visiting clients, going to look at projects that were being built.
Mm-hmm.
Have probably been to more casinos than I'd like to admit and realize, between the U.S., the UK, Asia.
Really?
Yeah, we did a lot of work there.
I didn't know all that.
I think I tried to count one time. I think it's north of 250, 300 casinos that I've been to.
I didn't even know there was that many in the world.
There's a lot, we did a lot of work with Native American tribes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
There's a lot of bars and taverns in Chicago that are growing there. So we were working for the government agencies. We were the lead consultant for Kansas Gaming Commission, where they were trying to issue a new license.
Mm-hmm.
So we were the lead consultant. Pretty much anyone that was going up for a license, we were going and reviewing their analysis and saying, yes, it worked, why it didn't work.
Okay.
Got a lot of hate mail.
When you had to say no.
When we had to say no, and we had to be, the decision came, there was 3 entities pretty much vying for a license, and we had to tell one they weren't financially feasible and viable.
Mm-hmm.
That was not fun.
No.
But
you got to do your job.
We did our job. We had to be, we had police escorts out after the licensing, just because it was serious money, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
we're talking hundreds of millions,
exactly,
if not more.
Yeah. And so, I did that for a while. Once again, late hours, sometimes sleeping in the office.
Yeah, wow.
It was tough, right? You got a child at home on every other week.
Yeah.
The weeks you don't have, you're traveling, you're trying to date. So you're just burning the candle at all different angles.
And of course, you are a great father, and I see you on social media doing wonderful things with both your daughters and your current wife, who's a lovely young lady. But you're burning the candle, like you said, when you're working, but then when you did have time, you wanted to put a whole month worth of fun with your daughter into that 1 week. So yeah, I can only imagine. Man, like I said, this gray hair is all earned in this business, and also being a father of 2 myself.
Disneyland Dad came out a lot.
Yeah.
And, I worked at Howard Hughes, so I was close to the Strip. So sometimes when I did have my daughter, my oldest at the time, her name's Tabitha, she would come to the office with me. I teach her the art of working, sleeping in the office, sleeping in a chair. And then she knew what was next, right? So I would go in for a couple hours. We'd head over to the link. We'd ride the high roller. She's probably riding it more than anyone in Vegas. We'd ride the monorail up and down for $5.
Yeah.
stop and go look at the flamingos and have dinner. And
Yeah.
and she loved that. I
Yep.
mean, she probably did that half a dozen times, if not more. So, but that's how I tried to blend it, make
Yeah.
sure that it was important. So,
Yep.
through this job, I actually met my wife,
Okay.
my current wife, Molly. She is an amazing woman.
She is.
Um, I was traveling for work, and I actually met her on a dating app in Tinder. On Tinder, my mom calls it the hookup site. But we met in Kansas City. I was doing work there,
Really?
and yeah, actually today is the 25th of February is our first date 9 years ago.
Wow.
So we're going out to celebrate that tonight. Yeah, so it does work, right? I mean, being a single guy, you're
Yeah.
traveling a lot.
You are the success story.
I am. Yeah. So, but after a while, I realized that the job I was in, the fit and the culture just wasn't there, and I needed something different. I've worked for companies that have 4 people. I've worked for companies that have 40,000 people.
Jeez.
And for me, it all comes down to culture
Yep.
and fit. Everyone that I work with, the vast majority of them can do their job, are intelligent, are probably smarter than me. But at the end of the day, I can teach you that. I can't teach you the culture.
No.
And so,
we preach that significantly here at VIP. I've been with the same management staff for 15 years. Sadly, we lost one of our managers last year, but Bill is doing an amazing job keeping the culture the same and moving forward. And I've had plenty of opportunities to go elsewhere. Definitely during the booms, there were significant hiring bonuses that were offered by some mortgage companies. We're talking in the significant 6 figures, and I never left. So I am 100% culture, family, fit, and you got to want to go to work too. And it's not just about the money; it's about being able to come in and you got people that got your back and you got their back. So I'll amen to that all day long when you talk about culture.
Yeah, so that's really important to me. Out of college, I did a lot of interviewing after I was at Bear, and we'd go back to Michigan and interview kids, students who were looking for a job, and I didn't care how smart they were, right? I realized that what I got in the experience I got after college, I couldn't learn in a textbook. Right? I needed to be taught. And so are you moldable? Are you want to learn? Are you interested, excited to come to work? Are you going to do a good job? Great. I'm not going to be that asshole who asks you, how many ping pong balls fit in a 747? I don't fucking care.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
No, I completely agree. I remember when I went to college, my mom was like GPA, GPA, GPA. And then when I started interviewing, before I decided to go in the mortgage business, I went to like the different investment firms and things like that. Of the top 10 things that matter, GPA was number 6. So there's 5 more important things that mattered in those interviews and on my resume versus what my GPA was. And you're 100% right, kind of like a realtor. You pass your real estate exam, all that did is teach you how to pass the real estate exam. Doesn't teach you anything about how to do real estate. But if you are moldable, if you are driven to learn, driven to be successful, and that's what drives you, you will be a great employee, even if your GPA was whatever it is.
Right. I had a good GPA, but
so did I.
So it helps a little bit.
It does.
Get that first job.
Well, back in the day, back in the 2000s. So I graduated in 1998. When did you graduate?
Graduated in 2000.
Okay, so back then there were certain firms that if you didn't have a certain GPA, they wouldn't even look at your resume. So yes, GPA does matter. I'm telling everybody, I went to college. Michael went to college. We got good grades. I had plenty of fun. I know Michael did too. But man, I had a lot of fun. But more importantly, college is just you started something, you finished it. But if you're driven, you're still going to have those. Oh, if we only hire from Harvard, but you know what? I've talked to a lot of people. Once again, my daughter is a senior in high school. She's going to go to college next year.
Go Tigers.
Yeah, she's going to go to LSU. Very proud of her, my wife and I. People think that the school you go to matters, and it 100% does. But I also ask people, where did your doctor go to college? And you're like, I don't know. He's just a good doctor. That's the point. You know what I'm saying? So you don't have to go to Harvard to be the best doctor. You don't have to go to Michigan to be the best investment banker. There's so much. All of my friends and close-knit colleagues in high school, or in college, they're all successful because they're successfully driven. And some of them had psychology degrees. Some were accounting, mine was finance, some was marketing. Everybody had something different, but the drive to be successful, to be able to take care of their families, to work hard, to provide. And that's why I do what I do. And I know that's exactly what you did, why you do what you do.
Appreciate that. Yeah. And everyone says the guy who graduates last in his class, in medical school, still a doctor. He might not be the best one, but he's still got
Well,
the
exactly. I
doctorate.
mean, just like on our test that you take, nobody ever says, "Hey, John Drennan, you took that national mortgage test years ago. What did you get?" Well, guess what? If I got 100% or I got a 75, I still passed. Now, yes, I typically got very good on those different tests back in the day because I take pride in it. But at the same time, you're 100% right. The fact of the matter is, if you pass the bar by the skin of your teeth, you're still a lawyer. And so that does matter. So, okay, so investment banking, you're doing it. And then you're talking about fit, you're talking about culture, you're talking about, what to do. And things were just, the paradigm was shifting in your professional life. And then what happened?
Yeah, so met my wife, and I was traveling a lot still, and I said, this, if we're gonna have the life that we want to have together, I need a different job,
Yeah.
right? I just need something that's a little bit more flexible,
Mm-hmm.
where I felt, working hard was never an issue. Like,
Yeah.
average days of investment banking for me were 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. So when everyone leaving at 5, that's my half day.
Yeah.
And so that was an issue, and I felt the amount of work I was putting in and the hours I wasn't getting compensated for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed to find something that I could do that was still with a work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to one of my dear friends in town, Jared Katz. He's an owner of MDL Group, and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting into commercial real estate." And he said, "Let's have lunch." And so we had lunch, and he spent the entire lunch convincing me why not to do it.
You know why? Because he's your friend.
Exactly. And he said, "Look, you're not coming out of college. You have a family, you have a mortgage, you have responsibilities. You're not going to make money for the first couple of years.
That's true.
And I don't want you to come to me and say 2 years in, hey, you sold me a bill of goods that's not there.
Yep.
That's not there."
Yeah.
And so I said, "All right, well, thanks." But he's like, "You have a different aspect from your finance background. Why don't you speak with my partner, Chaim?" So Chaim Mizrahi is the CEO of MDL Group, very well known, born and raised here.
Mm-hmm. Very well known.
I've known him also. He actually grew up on the same block as my ex-wife and used to go into their garage, refrigerator, and steal Otter Pops. So, Vegas is a small town, right?
It can be very small.
And we had a great lunch, and I had a lot of questions. He was very intrigued. He said, "Well, I didn't think about that. That's interesting." But he also
you have a financial mindset, and he has a commercial real estate mindset, and you guys came together. Yeah, that's nice.
And he said, "But you shouldn't do this." I said, "Okay."
Because once again, he's your friend.
Right. So finally, the three of us had lunch, and they spent the entire lunch as well convincing me not to do this. And he said, "Okay, if you're going to do it, the next thing we do is we do a handwriting assessment." And I'm thinking, you guys have lost your fucking mind. That's just going to. So he said, "No, here it is. Fill this out." And usually the company does it because I wasn't an employee. And he said, "You send it into the guy, you pay the fee, whatever." And so it's just a blank sheet of paper. Tell us your ideal work environment. And by the way, the first 5 lines have to be in cursive.
Man, I haven't written in cursive in years.
It did take me a couple times to figure it out, but I thought it, and I'm like, all right, do I mail it in? Because I'm thinking, I don't know, the amount of pressure you put on the pen? No, just scan it to me. So I scanned it to this guy. He's like, all right, I'll speak to you in 2 weeks. And we set up a call. And like I said, usually you don't get to have this conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there at my kitchen table having this call with this gentleman. And I tell people all the time, it was like he sat shotgun my entire life. He knew me to a T. And I'm just like mind blown. I'm like, first thing he says, "Look, I don't think you should do commercial real estate. You are not going to be good at going out and getting a client. You're going to be the guy at a function, standing in the corner, talking to your friends, and not going to meet people."
Mm-hmm.
And he's 100% right. That's not who I am. I've had to grow out of that.
Yes.
I still don't like it, but you have to do it. He said, when you get a client, you're going to treat them well, you're going to do a good job, but you're not going to be the guy who goes out and gets them.
So he's saying you're going to be an amazing gatherer, and you're not going to be a hunter. And in my business for 27 years, I have to hunt for my food. I've
Every
never
day.
had marketing agreements with anybody or anything like that. I've had to hunt for my food. And your mind, your personality, analytics, the whole 9 yards, you are not a hunter, but here you are.
Here I am. And, so I hung up the phone. I turned to my wife. I was like, guess I'm not doing commercial real estate. But we chatted about it, right? And we knew it was going to be an investment in the business. And we were willing to bet wouldn't say our future, but our lifestyle
Yeah.
on myself,
Well, for
right?
the first 2 years, you don't have that income coming in.
I mean, it's 100% commission, right?
Yes,
I'm a
sir.
1099 employee. I pay for my own health insurance. I pay for everything. They provide a service at MDL Group. They do an amazing job, graphics, marketing, all that kind of stuff. But you have to go out and do your business.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, let's do it. Took the test, started in November of 2018. I don't really count 18. It was like 2 years.
Yeah.
My first year in the business, I made net. Now there's gross in it.
Yeah.
$12,000. $12,000.
Well, 74% of realtors in residential realtors in 2024 did not sell a house. So guess what? Net of 12,000 was a heck of a lot more than 74% of residential realtors.
This is true, and you know it is discouraging, but you have to go into it with the mindset that they kind of train me for. It's like no one's coming to me day one and say, Michael, can you sell my $5 million business,
No.
my building? Could I do it? Sure, but I had no idea what the fuck I was doing.
Nope.
And it takes a while, just time on in the seat, right? It's a different language. I always say every industry has a different language. When I was doing gaming and I was doing gaming, there's different language. Investment banking, there's different languages that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate's the same thing.
Yep.
I remember I started out in a cube and I would hear all the other seasoned brokers talking, well, what do you think this is worth? What's the rate here? And I'm like, how do they know that? It's just time.
Yeah, but if they would have walked into Bear Stearns back in 2002, they would have been like, what kind of language is that?
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. And so you just learn, right?
Yeah.
That you got to sit there, you got to soak it up, and
Yep.
it's going to take time. And the bet that my wife and I were willing to make is that while my salary was here at coming out of, banking,
Mm-hmm.
it was going to rise,
Yeah.
3% bonus here and there, whatever, but it wasn't going to get to the level where I thought I could, and I thought I should deserve. And so it went from here to here, but it was going to be a hockey stick. And, they said 2 to 3 years, year 2 of my career was pandemic.
Yep.
So that put a wrench in things.
Mm-hmm.
Coming out of it actually was very good because people had a lot of money. They had some PPE money, rates were really low, and people wanted to just buy small office.
Yep.
And so it did take a couple years to really
Yep.
grow into that and just get to where I thought I could be, and we're still growing. I mean, it's untapped potential,
Yes.
right? I can make a little, I can make a lot. It really just depends on how much I want to work. If I don't want
just going to say that.
If I want to take a month off, my wife wouldn't let me. But if I wanted to take a month off, my team also wouldn't let me. But I could do it,
But
right?
technically you could.
And I wouldn't make any money.
Yeah.
But that's a choice that I would do. So,
But that's also why you're in it, because you can control the narrative. You can control your energy, your effort, your attitude. You can peel back when it's necessary. If there's something extremely important in your family life, some dream or aspiration or big celebration or birthday party, graduation, whatever it is, you can peel back and say, hey, I'm going to be gone, guys, for 10 days, but you got a team. They're going to take care of you. But at the same time, you're an early riser, first one in, last one out kind of stuff. And it's funny because I come into work very early and I'm up early. My wife gets up early. I get up early. I'm sending emails at 5, 6 in the morning. I leave early afternoon because a lot of times it's for getting my son or doing something with my daughter, and then turn around. But I'm also sending emails at 8, 9 o'clock at night. So I will take that because I tell the story all the time of going to SeaWorld, okay, and missing the dolphin show. And my wife's like, why can't you go in? I'm on the phone. I would rather be on the phone taking care of business, missing the dolphin show versus being locked in a office 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. Like you said, you have no control. And like you said, yeah. And I have friends that work in investments. I have friends that are self-employed business owners. They're all doing well, but I guarantee you the ones that have to punch the clock that do well, their lives are different than the ones that do well and they can make their own hours. But on the flip side, the ones that make their own hours are typically the ones who are still thinking about work morning, noon, and night. The ones that punch the clock, when they are done, they're done. So that's a different lifestyle too. I've never had that.
Same. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I always was tethered to a desk. I was working long hours in the office. The only time I would leave the office if I was on a business trip or a meeting. Right here, it's different. I used to tell my wife, "Hey, I was only in the office for 2 hours today." She's like, "You're supposed to only be in the office for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to be out meeting clients
Correct.
and touring properties and all that kind of stuff." So it definitely took a mind shift. it's still there. I mean, 6 years in, it's still that shift because for 18 years, you're doing something else.
Yeah.
But, I'm not a morning person, but I've become one because my kids get up early, got to get them to school. And yeah, I'm in the office early, but like you, I leave early,
Yeah.
right? I leave at 3:30, 4:30, depending on what time I need to be home.
Yep.
Have that kid time, and then most nights I'm back on the computer, even if it's my home office or
Yep.
just sitting next to my wife watching TV and just getting emails, so I'm prepared.
Oh yeah.
And like you, it doesn't shut off. I'm
No.
always thinking about stuff, always waking up in the middle of the night.
I was just gonna say that sometimes I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and think about a file, think about, did this go right? I can't shut it off.
Constantly have a to-do list on my notes in the phone. It's constantly there. So
Yes.
it's constantly, and my wife, her thing is, I'm like, when can you come home? Here, can you get home a little early? No, I got to finish it. It's always going to be there. You can never get 100% of your work done.
No.
And there's always going to be something else. And you just have to learn how to prioritize
Yep.
and do what's important to get the job done and satisfy your clients.
Well, we use a delayed email system, okay, on follow-ups. And so if I tell you, hey, I'm going to reach out to you in about 6 months, that delayed email is going to pop up. Well, once again, that's a delayed email. I told you I couldn't call you in about 6 months. That is the least of my priority on that day because I have to get through everything else. Now, if I get to it, I get to it. But I did not tell you at this day, on this time, whatever. So guess what? If I call you 6 months and 3 days, I told you I'm going to call you in like 6 months. And so you have to do that. And when you get home, by the time you drive from your office to your house, you already got another 10 emails, and then you have to prioritize them. Are these tomorrow available ones, or do I need to pick up that phone call and call that one client and talk to him about, whatever it may be?
Yeah, and I try to balance that. When I'm home, I have people calling me all different times, and it's different clients. Unfortunately, get different time commitments, right?
100%.
My clients who I do a lot of work with, or I'm working on some deals with, they call me at 6, I'll probably pick it up.
Yeah.
Call me on the weekends, I'll probably pick it up. But if I'm getting a random number or someone who's looking I've never dealt with before, you got to build that rapport.
Yeah, or you got the one client who's been with you for 3 years, but he's a looky-loo and hasn't bought. He calls you at 7 o'clock on a Thursday night. You're like, that one's going to voicemail, honey. Yeah. Well, with commercial real estate, okay, so residential lending, I can pretty much just help people buy houses, refinance, single family up to 4 units. We do have some unique products on the broker side where we can go a little bit higher, but we're doing single family, townhouses, condos, manufactured houses that are converted to real property. That's what I do, okay? Licensed in 18 states. So I'm all the way up in Washington, all the way down to Florida. In that Midwest, I got Ohio, Michigan,
What
Indiana.
happened to the other 32 states?
Some of them are crazy, like state of New York, crazy to get a real estate or to get a mortgage license. Utah's crazy. They kind of want to suck your soul, make you take all this stuff. And I'm like, I've been in the business for 27 years and you want me to like start over like I'm brand new. So 18 is good for now. I'll tell you the dollar amount that I have to spend for those CEs and the relicensing and the time, those really
Do you have it? Are you licensed in Louisiana?
Not yet. Not yet, but I'm thinking about it. Definitely thinking about it. With all that being said, that's what I do, okay? But commercial real estate, when I say that, I know what it kind of means because I'm in the business, but what is commercial real estate really? I mean, let people know all the different things. And then I think if I remember correctly, in your MDL group, you have people that are like a specialist.
Right.
And so that's something where when you go to MDL and you say, hey, I know Michael Greene and I want to do this. And you say, hey, that's great. That's not really my specialty. I'm going to send you over to my dear partner. And then you guys will work your commissions and stuff later on. Right. But that's the great thing about MDL group. Your commercial real estate, you pretty much do it all, but you have the specialists within your group. So tell me about that.
So MDL, it's a boutique firm, which is also what I really enjoy. That's kind of my style, boutique. I mean, I've done the corporate, but I prefer the boutique. So MDL Group, been around 36 years in Vegas. It started in Vegas. Really started as a property management company. So anytime you have a building that has issues, we get property managed. We manage about 12 million square feet in Vegas. And so that's on the property management side. They do an amazing job. It's a very hard job. It's a thankless job. People don't call them up and say, hey, you did a great job with the landscaping tape. No, they call up and say, hey, my roof is leaking because it's raining once every 200 days. And all hell breaks loose because everyone's is leaking. So that's the property management side. I'm on the brokerage side. And so there's really 5 food groups per se in commercial real estate. There's office, industrial, retail, multifamily, which is anything 5 units and up, and land.
Okay.
And so like you mentioned, we do have specialists in the office. I'm on the office team. So there's me, Chaim, who is the CEO of the company. There's myself. There's another gentleman, Luke Ramos,
Hmm.
and then we have a team coordinator, Olivia, who we brought on to help us manage the business,
Yeah.
so we can work on the business and in the business, but focus on what needs to get done.
Perfect. Perfect.
And so within that, we also there's certain people who do different things within that. So there's brokers in town who only represent tenants looking for space.
Okay.
We do it all, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's just what we've fallen into.
Hmm.
Mainly because we have a property management on site. We get a lot of referrals from our property managers in the business that say, hey, this gentleman owns this business. He's looking to maybe sell it or lease some space. So we
Hmm.
do a lot of working with the seller or the landlord.
Okay.
And so we focus a lot of our work is on owner user office buildings. So if you are you have your own business
Hmm.
and you want to buy a business or buy a building to operate out of it, that's where we focus. We
Okay.
do a lot of owner user. We do a lot downtown.
Yeah.
We do a lot on Lawyers Row, and so we found that niche very
Yep.
helpful. Believe it or not, the way we started working on that is a client of ours who was an industrial client called Chaim and said, "Hey, by the way, I've got 4 buildings downtown on 7th and Bonneville. Do you want to
Hmm.
sell them?" I said, "Well, I didn't know you owned those, but sure, we'll take a look." So we went down and we started looking at those buildings, and there are all these houses built in the 30s and 40s,
Yep.
been converted. Lots of the architecture and just the house. They're not cookie cutter, right?
No,
They're all different.
they are.
So we said, "Wow, this is an untapped market, and no one's really looking at it." And so we ended up started writing letters, old school letters, believe it or not, to all downtown. And it's time, and we talked about it, and our team was like, if we're going to do it, we have to do it right. You don't send one letter, it's a cadence
Yeah.
of, we're going to give you some information. And what are we going to give you? Market stats for your specific submarket or how the market is doing overall in general. And so we started sending letters and we started getting calls and we started selling a lot of buildings down there. Now they're not huge, right? I mean, they're under $1 million
Yeah.
sales price, but coming out of the pandemic,
Hmm.
people wanted small office that they can go to escape their house,
Yep.
be close to the courthouse.
Hmm.
And so we turned over a lot. SBA, people were using the small business
Yep.
loan. And at that point, the rate in SBA was sub 3%.
Yep.
And so your corporate debt was just about 4, so you're sub 4% on your entire stack,
Yep.
and it's very impressive. And so you're paying very low. It was cheaper to own than lease at
Oh
the
yeah,
time,
definitely.
and so I think it was 21 and I forget, it was 2021 or 22. There was 12 houses that sold that year. Kind of this owner year, we sold 75% of them.
Yep.
So we sold 8 of them just
Yeah.
because of letters.
Yeah.
And we still do it.
Old school.
We just sent out a huge marketing campaign about how the market's going and what's going on. And you send some out. You hope you get 1 or 2 hits.
Yep.
And we've got 4 or 5 that people are interested.
That's huge. And that's the difference really in commercial real estate versus residential real estate. I'm not trying to be disrespectful because I'm in the residential side, but you guys are talking about, nets and rates and stacking and let's be honest, a realtor says, what are you looking for? 4 bedroom, 3 bath, 2 car garage in Summerlin. Hey, John, this price point is in this range. What do they qualify for? I mean, it's a completely different world. But that's also why a realtor, you can be brand new in the business, meet a friend and go buy a house. And you got your first deal in your first 30 days, possibly. First 30 days of me doing what I do um, um, was December of 1998, the same month that I graduated University of Cincinnati. I started working 2 days before Thanksgiving, 1998. And within 30 days, and this is back in the day when I was a broker, and this was back in the day where you got a certain percentage of the actual net income. So you had the net income come in off these loans, and if you hit a certain amount, you get 30%, 40%, all the way up to 50%. And my first month, I hit the max, and I'm like, wow, this is life changing. It's a lot better than $12 an hour. And then it just took off, and of course, good years, bad years, whatever. But we're, you could get things going quick. Commercial real estate slow. And the crazy thing is during the economic collapse, I said maybe I need to get out of the business, and I interviewed as a commercial realtor, and I was hired on the spot. But the guy said, "You won't make any money for the first year." And I said, well, I'm not making any money in the mortgage business. Why the heck am I going to not make money? Because I have to learn this whole business versus that. So when during the economic collapse, I was hired for every 100% commission sales job because everybody's like, man, we really love you, John. And I'm like, but if you're not giving me anything, I have a young child. I would love to have my wife to have more children in the future, which she ended up doing. But I'm like, I have to bring money into this family.
Yeah.
And so I can't take any of these jobs. I stayed in the business and here I am. But yeah, you're right. It's not easy and it's a whole process.
Look, I couldn't do residential, right? I mean, I could, but I choose not to, right? Our company does not do any residential. We get that a lot of, do you do that? No, we have referral partners that we do that with. And so the way I look at it, bear tax, right? Residential, you make the decision with your heart. Commercial with your head. Because I know from, especially with me, when I've bought a couple houses, it's, hey, we can't afford that, but the wife really wants it. And so you end up buying it anyway.
Yeah.
In commercial, it's a numbers game.
It always is.
Really comes down.
Yeah.
Now there is some emotional attachment and some people, you know, I don't want to sell. My dad built the building. We'll give you X. No, I'm never selling. And you lose a ridiculous offer.
Yeah.
But, and also the thing that you mentioned is the time frame, right? So, you know, getting leases done, when you got to tour the property, all that kind of stuff, it takes a couple months. And, you know, we get paid when you sign the lease and then when they take occupancy and all that kind of stuff. But sales can take much longer. And so, you know, there was a deal, you know, that you're working with a client. It might take you 3-4 years to find that right property for them to purchase. Or you have a listing that it might take 3 or 4 years for you to sell it. And so, you know, yeah, you get excited about what could come, but you got to figure out what's actually going to hit the bank this month, right? We've gone away from getting excited about deals that potentially could happen until they do. And so, you know, there's always reasons to extend. We're working on a deal right now. It's a office building that's in shell, which means there's no interior. It was a former office building. They took it to shell and sell it like that. You know, we're supposed to close in November, and here we are, it's February. And we're on our 7th amendment to escrow. And so obviously, did I want the deal to close in November? Sure. Right. But I also want the deal to close. So you're going to work, you know, once the deal goes into escrow, that's when the work really starts.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the commercial side, you got to keep it together. On the residential side, as long as you, and I've sadly had this, I've had people die during the process. I had a lady at her job.
We have to.
Yeah. We had a lady at her job 17 years. 3 days before she was closing, she lost her job. So those are the things that can happen. You go into escrow, it fails inspection, it fails appraisal, things like that happen. And sadly, there's bad mortgage people out there too that pre-approve people. I literally have been dealing with so many people that were pre-approved by someone else. They got into contract, the deal died because they weren't really approved. Then they sent them to me, and these clients could not and should not have even been shopping. But what I do know about commercial real estate is that you're 100% right. You get into contract and you open escrow, that's when the work happens because you are doing everything you can to make sure the deal doesn't fall apart, because commercial deals fall apart all the time because of a number coming in that they thought the number was going to be here and it ended up being here. And you got to be like, well, can we, you know, I mean, you're not fudging the numbers, but you're like, what can we do to change the actual purchase price and the actual terms of the contract? You're
constantly negotiating. Right. And so, you know, you see the building. Usually our escrows are 90 days, 60 days, 30 to 60 days of due diligence, and then 30 days to close. Now, also, when you add in some people doing financing, the bank gets involved, and that can extend it because it takes them longer to underwrite and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, you go out, you go inspect the building. Oh, well, this is an issue. That's an issue. Well, the seller's most likely, I don't want to fix it. If it's a couple thousand, sure. But if it's a new roof, or I'll just give you a credit at closing. And then it puts the onus on the buyer. Do they want to do that? So it's a constant negotiation. There's a great book, you know, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I've actually used some of the tricks and I was like, holy shit, it works. But, you know, one of the things that really stuck out is the negotiation doesn't really start until someone says no. And that's when you kind of push those pain points to figure out what is it that really doesn't work.
Exactly.
And then how do you negotiate to do that? You know, we work with lots of buyers, we work with sellers, tenants, landlords, and and everyone is different in how they approach things. And, we had one client where she was representing the family, and, she was our client and we were recommending certain, she's like, no, we're not going to do it. And you're thinking, how could you not do that?
Yeah.
Right. And their stance the whole time was no, no, no on all these things. And we ended up getting the deal done, but it took much longer. Right.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
so you have to realize and figure out, until someone says no and walks away, they want to get the deal done.
It's still on the table.
Both sides.
Yep.
And so how do you figure out what works best for people in trying to get the deal across the finish line?
Yep.
Right. And that's really what it is. And you hold your breath, you do everything you can, and then you wait until you get the email from title and escrow that it recorded, and then you can celebrate.
Exactly. Well, that's why you're very successful, because number one, how do I put this? When you get to certain specs or places in that escrow, you need to be less of a salesman and more of a analytical, mind. And that's why you have been so successful in the short term. You haven't been doing this for 25 years. You get to a point where no matter how salesy you can be, there's something that has to be done analytically, and you're going to go in there and you're going to find that number. You're going to, do like a forensic audit, and you're going to find that number, and that's that pressure pain point where you get it to the seller or you get it to the buyer, and that a lot of times gets you over the finish line.
Yeah.
And somebody who's just an amazing salesman or saleswoman would not have the ability to do that. And your background actually, even though, once again, don't get in commercial real estate, don't get in commercial real estate, don't get into commercial real estate. Look at you now, you're in commercial real estate, is the fact that you have that and you bring that to the table. And that's also what makes you different, Michael.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I think is a misnomer out there is Vegas is a different market than a lot of other markets when it comes to office, right? We're great at what we do. Industrial's really strong here. Retail's really strong, but there's this national just mindset of how the office market is. And I brought a piece of paper because I wanted to take it verbatim. I was listening to a podcast on my way to work this morning.
Okay.
And I literally paused it and stopped, and it's like, all right, I got to listen to this again when I get to the office to take notes, because they were talking about the office market since the pandemic.
Okay.
The pandemic's been, I get it. It impacted a lot of people not coming back to work. Certain businesses, you need to go back to work.
Yes.
Right? You need to be in office. There's some that you can do from home, but not. And so this was what was the lady talked about. It was a commercial for another podcast, but it said, since the pandemic, empty office buildings have become much more common in many cities. And why can't we just turn them into housing? Was the quote that someone said this morning.
Really?
And I was like, wow, that's pretty ironic that I'm coming to talk about commercial real estate. And so, yes, there have been people that are looking to do that kind of work. It's very hard if you think about an office building, and then it's not designed.
No.
There's not plumbing. There's all this. So, some places like in New York, maybe it could work, but it's very costly.
Yeah.
And so it got me thinking, let me look up my stats for last year. So last year, the team that I'm on, at the end of the year, we get different awards. And so our team was Deal Maker of the Year, which is number of deals that we did, the most number of deals done in a year.
Wow. Okay. Congratulations.
So, thank you. Last year, our team, we did 86 deals.
Okay.
So it's a lot of deals,
That's
right?
it. 7 a month.
Yeah, 7 a month, and so I looked even further, like what's the stats? Because while we do focus on office, we do get some people that want to talk about industrial. We do some retail, we do some land, all that kind of stuff. Of those 86 deals, 66 of them were office deals.
Wow.
So it's more than one a week.
Yeah.
Of those, we did 8 industrial. We stole some land in Pahrump, some 8 parcels, and then some were just other referral partners. That. And I said, all right, well, that's interesting. Let me look at the breakdown between leases and sales. So of the 86 deals, we did 59 leases. Once again, over 1 a month.
Yeah. 1 a week.
One a week.
Yep.
Yeah. We did 20 sales, both buying and selling. So, almost two a month.
Yeah. 2 a month.
And then 7 other, referrals kind of stuff. So, when I hear the market talk about, or the national sentiment that office market is dead, it could be in some places, right? New York, there's an issue. San Francisco, there's a lot of issues. So there are office buildings that are vacant. I just read a story in Minneapolis that a building recently sold for 200 million, 6-8 years ago, it just sold for $6.5 million.
Wow.
Now there's a problem there, right?
Yeah.
I think the percent was like 97.5% discount of what it sold recently. We don't have that issue.
Nope.
What we have in Vegas is a lack of inventory.
True. On the residential side and on the commercial side.
Commercial, there's a lot of industrial that's being built, a lot of retail that's being built. Office, there's not a lot.
No.
And so there are, I looked up the stats. In the fourth quarter of 2024 Q4, there was 4.4 million square feet of industrial space under construction.
Wow. I see it all over.
Right.
But when you put that number together, you're like, holy moly, that's a big number.
So 4.4, and they've delivered a lot over last year. It's 15, 18 million of square feet of industrial has been delivered last year. Currently, right now, there's 66,000 square feet of office being built.
That's it.
That's it. So
there's 4.4 million industrial, 66,000.
And none of the 66,000 was delivered in Q4. So it's coming up.
Coming up, yeah.
A lot of that is on the shelf space, and we just don't have enough. And I get it, right? Because of the notion it's not a lot. It's getting more and more costly to build.
Yep.
And so that's the issue that we're running up to. When you get an owner user says, hey, I'm looking for 20,000 feet or I'm looking for 10,000 feet, you might run a search and like, here's your 4.
Yeah,
right?
That's it. Here's your 4.
And they're like, well, why aren't you showing me what's in the market?
You're like, that
is the market.
Yeah.
So that's the trouble.
Yeah.
What we've also seen is I talked about shell condition, right? So that's a building, pretty much all the walls are there. You got to do everything else.
Correct.
Versus just buying an owner user second generation. So we've got a couple deals that we're working on right now. As I mentioned, one building on West Sahara. It's a 23,000 square foot building. There were 2 tenants, a dentist and a real estate office in 19,000 feet. The real estate office built their own building. And so the client came to us and said, what should I do with this? And we said, well, if you lease it for $2 a foot, you're not really going to make a lot of money on it. And you're going to have to spend a lot of money to retrofit the building to make it usable. Because the way it was with a real estate office, residential, a lot of small offices, everyone's got their team, it's just not functional for anything but that.
Correct.
We said, what you should do is you should demo the building. And he has construction background. It cost him $6 a foot to demo the whole thing into one big shell space. And we were going to go out and sell it as office condos. So we we're going to take the 19,000, condo it to smaller spaces between 2 to 5,000 feet, condo it out, sell them as 6 different condos or configurations, sell them between $325 to $350 a foot, which is much higher than you would sell it if it's own user.
Exactly.
Turns out we ended up getting one owner.
Wow.
This is the deal I'm talking about that's been taking a while. That's in 7 escrows or 7 extensions. And we're selling it for $310 a foot. And so, he's taking 19,000 feet. It's what people want. Yeah. We've got another deal we're working on. It's a shelf space that we're representing the buyer. We're selling that for $303 a foot, or buying it for $303 a foot. On the flip side, we've got a couple of deals that we're working on that are office right now that are just owner user. I'm going in and buying the building. Those two sales are at $265 or $260 a foot.
Oh, wow.
So there's about we're seeing right now about a 40%, $40 per square foot increase in someone taking a shell. Wow. And so it's really interesting because the shell that's going up, obviously a lot of people want to be on the bend or the curve, as they're calling it by IKEA. Those right now are $385 a shell.
Well, location.
And that's just the shell, right? You're probably, depending on the use, if you're medical or just office, you're anywhere from 150 to maybe, for medical, another 300 a foot to build out.
Yeah, you got it. That's right.
That's a lot of money. But that's what people are paying for. So there's demand for that.
Huge demand.
We just don't have it. So we're looking for clients who say, hey, I've got this older building. I've got some tenants that are expiring. They don't have their leases. What should I do? And you run the numbers, and almost every single time, you let the leases expire, you shell out the building, you either sell it as condos or one big thing, and you're going to make more money.
There it is. Michael Greene, MDL Group. He's spitting knowledge today, man. I appreciate that. Once again, we're dear friends. We've known each other for many years, but I love when you come in, do some stats, do some experiences and scenarios and stuff like that. Like I said, we live in two different worlds, but actually a lot of times we cross each other. And so, Michael, thank you very much for coming in today. Send love to your wife and your children, and thank you very much for the kind words you said about my daughter. Yes, LSU. She's excited for that, and my wife and her have to travel there end of March, early April for some freshman orientation requirements. So definitely great things. But once again, Michael, thank you so much for coming in today. Really appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate you having me on. I know it took me a little while to get over the hump. You invited me a couple of times, but I really appreciate it. So I really appreciate it. And last thing is just go blue.
The Ohio State. All right. Thank you.